Okay, it's the first day back in the office since March, and this guy's been waiting for me since then. He arrived in the post a couple of days after I started working from home, and we all went into lockdown. So let's give him the love he deserves.
Scruffy Crow.
Okay, bit of a change from the norm. Our lone warrior is resting in this takeaway tub of Clean Spirit. So I'm using this as a replacement for meths. Even this very morning, someone put a comment on my meths video saying, "Isn't this horribly dangerous? Probably don't touch that." And yet, fair enough. Meths probably isn't the best thing to be using casually. This, however, it's got a lot less big, scary stickers on the back. Probably still don't drink it or put it in your eyes, but I'm not going to worry as much, or at all. It also doesn't smell, it just smells like soap. And I'm fairly confident that it's not going to do anything adverse to my little takeaway container here. So I'm going to leave him in here, I don't know, a couple of days, until it looks like the paint might have loosened. I'm in no rush. The Lone Warrior has been marinating here for about 3 hours now. So I'm on my lunch break, and already the paint is starting to sort of lift and get all sort of lumpy, and I've given him a quick scrub on the front with my toothbrush already. So I'm just gently going over. Now, in my experience, this stuff doesn't have any effect on the plastic, so we can be as rough as we like. And we are getting down to the bare plastic under here. That old Chaos Black undercoat is protecting him. So he is looking pretty terrible at the moment. So I'm going to put him back in the juice and see, now we've stripped off that silver paint, if we can give it a bit more time and see if it'll eat through the rest of what's on there. Okay, so here he is all cleaned up. There's still plenty of black undercoat kicking around, but nothing that's obscuring any details. I've also gone round with a whole series of files and taken out any mould lines I could see. I've even added a bit of detail by carving down the back of the horns, because on the original model they go from here right into the side of his shoulder pad. So I've been working on just sort of smoothing that out. I'm guessing that was a limitation of the original mould. I mean, we're not completely removing it, just trimming it down a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with the way he's coming out now. So next thing I want to do is I want to get him off this base. So look away now, Heroquest purists. The feet on there are very shallow. So I don't really want to saw that off, because even using the finest jeweler's saw blade, I'd still lose, a millimetre or so off the bottom there. So I'm actually going to take the base away downwards and then file it and shape the bottom of the base into some nice platform boots for him. So I've just got some of my older snips, my cheap snips, and I'm just going around, cutting around the outside of his feet. This is tough plastic. Alright, until we get something a bit like that. Now if you look on this side here, these boots aren't obviously too deep or anything. I think they look fairly reasonable. So next up I'm going to take my scalpel, which is nice and sharp, and I'm just going to carve the sides here, which are all rough from where I snipped them, into the shapes of the side of his boots all the way around. Sort of try and blend that into a certain extent. What I've not mentioned is, obviously as you're watching this now, you'll know that we went into a second lockdown. So that one visit to the office where I picked this guy up, that was it. That was my only visit to the office this whole year, because it doesn't look like I'll be going back before New Year now. Okay, so I've taken a bit of the depth off with the snips, but I'm going to work on a bit more with the emery board. Cool, so now we've got his boots nice and even. I've got a base prepared for him already, so this is just a 30mm lip base, what I put a lot of my fantasy models on. And it's already got a little bit of tape on it to cover the slot. And I could glue this guy down with some plastic glue, but I don't know where that is right now. Just going to use a bit of this super glue. Next up is a dab of PVA. So I've got the glue on the base, wipe off the excess, and now into the coarse bird sand. So the Lone Warrior has got a black paint job. He's been caught with a little bit of grey when I've been doing these other models, but not to worry. Alright, so this guy's now got a nice clean undercoat on him. And I've painted his base and his boots brown a little bit, just because I was painting something else brown at the time. One of the things I like about these guys is a pretty quick paint job. I'm going to start off with this pig iron. This cheap Chinese brush has failed on me in a most spectacular way. So I'm using a small amount of paint and a lot of brush strokes. Get a nice even coat across here. So now it's been a while since I painted one of these models, so I don't know exactly, can't remember off the top of my head exactly how I did the rest of these. So I'm just going to paint it the same way I fancy pretty much. I hope it kind of matches him. Next up I'm going to get some gold. I'm just going to use this on the bottom of his axe here. And his little head ball. XV88. And this is going to be his weapon haft. Well, not the whole haft, just the grip. Also the backs of these little knee pads here. I'm a little bit annoyed at myself, I didn't fill in this little well on the back here when I was cleaning him up. That only took a couple of seconds, but I didn't, and now I'm not going to. Okay, base gloves and boots is going to be Rhinox hide. Now I'm going for a mix of the Rhinox hide and the XV88. Use my wet palette here. And I'm just slapping this on while the previous layer is still drying, all nice and thin, letting them blend together a little bit. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more of the XV88. And just do the very highlights. And even though this is a plastic mini, which I tend to avoid in the general scheme of things, I think probably because it's just so old school, it's got that vibe of painting an old mini. It's got a flow that I like. Okay, the chainmail and axe head are going to get some of this contrast grey. It's one of the reasons I did them first, because I knew that I'd want this dry by this step. And this should bring out every single little bit of that chainmail. Nice and clear. And give me some good contrast on this axe head. I'm going to jump in with a dab of Celestia Grey on his little skull here. So this is some P3 Idran flesh on the actual axe haft itself, on the wooden part. As you can see, I'm being a lot more careful now, because we now have bits around it that we've already painted. Actually, as this is drying, the contrast on my little boots has kind of gone down a bit, so I'm just going to kind of re-highlight that, but be a little bit braver. A little bit of Xandri dust. This we're going to be really careful about. This is going to go on his axe haft as well, and this is just going to be in some nice, I say straight lines, real wiggly lines. I'm going to try and just follow that. That's probably too much wiggle if I'm honest. We'll turn that one bit of wiggle the opposite direction. Put a little spot in it. I'm going to work around, keep my little lines. We're also going to use the Xandri dust. I'll use this as the base for some bone on his horns. The base is going to get a bit of this gun corpse brown. This is almost dead, but that works quite nice. It kind of reminds me of one of those Games Workshop dry brush paints that didn't really work. And before that even fully dries, and without really cleaning the brush, I'm going to go in with a bit of this Menoth white base and just sort of really gently pick out the tops of that sand. Okay, now for the tiniest dab of null oil, just around the little skull we did, just to bring out the little details and kind of point out where the edges are. Keep going with the washes. Got some Earthshade. I'm going to use this to blend in that whole haft area, the two colours on there, make that a little bit more realistic. And to bring out the detail in the sort of wrapped portion and knock off the shine on that gold. Very multi-purpose. Also add some shadows to the edges of these horns, tone that colour down, and once again knock off the gold up there. And just bring out these little straps on the back there. They've got a nice little detail down the middle of them, so it kind of pulls that out without having to do any tiny highlighting. So I've got some of this bright silver, quicksilver. Back to the cheap nasty brush. Straight out of the pot like a heathen. And I'm going to run this down the edge of this blade. All the edges. And then just putting some little consecutive lines in, and we'll move some of those up onto this side of the blade as well. And there we have a well-worn and sharpened weapon. I'm also just going to give a little tickle of this on the bottom of the chainmail on the back and the front, just to bring out a little highlight there without doing the whole thing. Okay, so now we've got some watered down Abaddon Black, and I'm literally going to touch up all the armour. So this guy got hit with a little bit of grey when I undercoated some stuff nearby, so I can kind of see which bits I've done and which bits I haven't. And obviously tidying up any messy over paint that I did, even on this little skull. Cool, we're on the final stretch now. I have highlighted his little skull in with a bit of white, and I've highlighted the horns with a bit of cream. I've got this really watered down, so I'm just sort of building this up in little layers. Just try and get that fade through. So some final touches. I've got an even lighter, creamy off-white. I'm just going to touch the very tips of these horns just before it meets that ball. And we're doing little streaks and lines. Try and make it look a little bit fibrous. And I think we're almost there. I think that just leaves this great coat grey. And basically now I am literally just going to edge highlight every single panel on his armour. Just outline everything and just highlight every little rivet. And there we go. That's him all finished up. I added a little bit of highlight to the gold there. And as well as the line highlights, I've really watered down some of this grey. So it's like literally transparent. I've just added a little bit of shading to the backs of the shoulder pads, the top of the helmet, just so it's not flat black. I think the armour looks pretty sweet. I think the gloves are nice and subtle. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. And I'm glad he's not still stuck in that envelope on my desk at work. Because if I hadn't gone into the office on that one day, at this rate he'd still be there in January. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.